Welcome to Divine Downloads. I'm your host, Cassandra Bodzak, and today's episode is all about the journey to self-love. Before we start today's episode, I want to make sure that you know that my new book, Manifesting Through Meditation, 100 Guided Practices to Harness the Power of Your Thoughts and Create the Life You Want, is now available wherever books are sold. It's the #1 new release on Amazon, and I hope you'll take some time to pick it up. This book goes through my 4-step manifesting process and has 100 powerful meditations to help you divinely design your life. And if you've already gotten it, please take a moment and leave me an Amazon review. It means the world to me, and it really helps the book be seen by other people out there that are on this spiritual journey right with us. So I am super excited to have Marla Goldberg on the show today. She is a world-renowned energy healer. She is a self-love expert, and I personally love the name of her book, which is My Effing Long Journey to Self-Love, or to Loving Myself, rather. Marla, I think you're in the perfect place. Welcome to the show. I think you have lots of people here that are eager to hear about your journey to self-love. And to hear you actually, I was fascinated to learn that you know over 24 energy healing techniques.
Yeah, and I just got certified as a master metaphysician from Delphi University. So in that certification, I would kick that one now up to over 30 because of all the techniques that I've learned in addition to what I've learned.
Wow. Okay. Well,
So
I definitely want to learn about some of those techniques today, but maybe we should start out at the beginning where,
okay.
What was the inspiration for this journey? What was the inspiration for you to become this energy healer, this master metaphysician and expert, I would say, on helping people love themselves?
Well, first of all, it wasn't a game plan. I never, ever thought that I would be down this road. I was a serial entrepreneur. I had an event management company. I started a candy manufacturing business. I had a pet taxi during my divorce, so I schlepped pets from here to there, a bakery. So the last thing I thought I would do would be metaphysics. I started going at 14. I had my first reading at 14. I was like, oh, that is so cool. But I never thought I would be giving readings. I would do this kind of work. But as a lot of people who you find in this industry, they hit rock bottom in some form or another. And the only way out is going down a spiritual path, whether it's through receiving energy work, learning energy work. Um, you just go down the path, and I'm one of those where I was in my first marriage was hellacious, and it was abusive mentally, emotionally, not physically, but sometimes physical might be better because those heal, where the emotional and mental are much harder to clear up. And I ended up going to a women's conference, and a woman, just to listen to this one woman talk about how to heal yourself. And I thought, I need to learn how to do this because nothing's working. Nothing. Everybody says you go to talk therapy, you change yourself and everything around you changes. Well, that wasn't my case. I had been going to talk therapy, and yes, you can vent, but it didn't change my situation. It didn't change what was going on. I mean, I was trying to change, but the rest didn't fall into place. So I went to his conference, listened to this woman speak. And you know how a lot of conferences, they start out by asking questions. How many out there feel this way? How many out there? And my hand was up the entire time. And I thought like it was going to fall off. And then she started talking, and I wasn't quite wrapping my mind around what she was saying. But there was a little voice inside that said, pay attention because nothing else is working. So when she had a one-day informational, the voice said, sign up. Nothing else is working. Then I signed up, and she goes, who's going to sign up for my basic? And out of the word, I mean, I didn't think I was going to do it, but my hand went flying up. It was like someone took my hand and raised it. And I went to the 4-day basic course and had my first known psychic experience. And I say that because a lot of times when you're in your head, things happen, but you don't realize that you're having a metaphysical experience. you just blow it off. Well, there was no blowing this off. It was a true psychic experience, a clairvoyant experience. And I was like blown away, like, oh my God, me. Because I have a friend who kept saying, my gut tells me this, my gut tells me that. And she was always right. And I'm like, what's wrong with my gut? Why isn't it working? Why isn't it guiding me anywhere? And so that was very exciting. But I still was having issues wrapping my mind around some concepts. And I was raised Jewish, I will say. Now, and the reason I say that is because there were a lot of the saints that we weren't raised with, and the archangels don't have the same names. And there was so much that I was unaware of, and I didn't understand where Jesus fit in with the whole process. And so when I went to the next modular, um, one of the teachers had to sit me down and explain, because I said, I'm not understanding how Jesus fits into all of this. And now, not only do I know, but he's come to me a number of times in to comfort me, to guide me. And so we're like this.
And just like that, Jesus was your homeboy.
One of them, yeah. I mean, it's just
Wow.
St. Anthony's there with me too all the time because I'm always calling on him. It's like I've got a beeline to St. Anthony. Now, I didn't know who St. Anthony was before I went down my spiritual path, but I've got to tell you, he helps me find things multiple times a day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Saint Anthony is like, I joke that he's a patron saint of our family. Between like my
yeah.
mom and my grandma, we have like Saint Anthony things everywhere. Always like, pray to Saint Anthony about this.
That's
I
that's
love
my
I
story.
love I love that. So I love how it's so true in those moments where we just feel guided, and it's like we get to that point of desperation where it's like nothing's working, but we know that there must be something out there that could work. And we, trust that. We have to trust that even if you weren't realizing, maybe you were trusting your intuition in that moment, like when the hand flew up, right? Or you're like, I just
Right.
have to go to this conference, or I'm just going to go to this lady's session, or, I don't even understand what she's saying, but I'm signing up for the thing. I feel that so strongly. I feel like, so many people work so hard on like marketing and all this stuff. And I'm like, when people are guided to you or you're guided to people, either direction, like it's so much bigger than anything you say, right? it's
It
it's
is.
it's like an energetic like magnetism that pulls you in. That's like, okay, Marla, this is the person that's going to be the first step on your journey, or this is the person that you need to be in front of right now.
Yeah. And you have to trust. You have to pay attention to the little signs. And if you're in your head all the time, you miss the clues. You totally miss the clues. But I agree with you. And the people that are meant to be in your world, in your sphere, will be there. But the other thing that people need to understand, I feel, is you have to ask for help, because angels and guardians, many of them are not allowed to just butt in, so to speak. You have to ask them. You have to say, I need help with this. Guide me, show me, teach me, whatever it is you want. If you're on your knees saying, help me, something will come. Oh, I just had an epiphany. Something will come to sort of help you. And there were many times as I was saying that, I was a vision of my life went past me where was really down and on my knees so many times, and I'd say, I need help with this and that, and not realizing that the intervention did come from spirit when um, I needed the help the most, and something showed up for me. But again, the point is asking.
Exactly. And it's often that's why we associate these like kind of bottom moments, right, with having that something move and something. And what really happens is it's just our human needs to get to that bottom to actually ask for the help, right? Whereas
Absolutely.
we can rewrite that paradigm and say, you get to ask for help. I try to encourage everyone, like, ask for help every day. I had a friend that's like an angel channel, and I spoke at a conference with her a couple years ago. And like, I will never forget this. One of the favorite things she said, like at the end of her little talk, she was like, give your angels homework every
Yeah.
night, like give them some things to do. And it's such a good practice, right? To get into that practice of constantly inviting inviting that divine help in, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such a beautiful way to end a conference, to remind people, you're not going to get the help. You're not going to get the intervention unless you ask for it. So by giving them homework, they've got something to do, keeps them busy, keeps them engaged with you. And on the other side, you're manifesting.
And what would you say to someone that's listening that's maybe like, okay, well, I don't know about St. Anthony, or I don't know about all the different angels yet. What's a good place for them to start asking for that help if maybe they don't know specifically who their squad is or the people that they're connected to that way?
Well, look, you don't even have to buy a book. You can go online and you can say, tell me who the top 10 archangels are, or tell me what angels do what. And you will find a lot of websites where it will list the angels and what they're in charge of. I know I keep doing the quotes, but
Yeah.
it's what, it's like saying, Archangel Michael is the warrior, and he's the protector, and he has so many roles, and Raphael is about healing. And so you've got Shemuel is about Archangel Shemuel is also about helping to find lost items. So you just have to find out, or say, who is the angel for, in Google, who's the angel for helping me to get a new job, and you will get a list of a number of angels that come up, and you just have to feel into it and see who resonates with you, and then talk to that angel.
Yeah.
And they have these formal prayers, which I was never raised with. So I just say, please help me. I need this. Please help, intervene this way, whatever it might be. You don't have to be fancy or formal.
I love that. Yeah. It's like, just do it. Just go for it. And I always just say, like, even if you just say, my guardian angels or any angels available willing to help me with this, right? You can
Yeah,
keep it that general, and there you will get that assistance. There, like you said, it's not as complicated sometimes as we try to make it in our head.
right. Well, in this, and I'm talking from me. I put myself in the place of other people where, again, not being raised with some of these very beautiful prayers that many people who are have been involved with going to church and religion learn from the course of childhood. I don't have those in my back pocket. So I just speak to the angels as I would speak to you or anybody else. And, when requesting something, I always say please and thank you. And, because I do believe that you need to be polite to your angels. You don't demand, but you can't command. But I still would put a please and thank you in there.
I like it. I like it. You can command, command, but don't demand. What would you say, other than talking to your angels and getting involved in that, were some of the first kind of tools or modalities or things that you learned on that early part of your self-love journey that really helped you make some big strides or have some
Well,
kind of epiphanies?
in that first school that I went to, there was a mystery school. So mystery schools, back in the day, they were called mystery schools because you had to do them in hiding. And I learned 14 different modalities. But just as important as learning them, I had to practice them. So in between each 5-day intensive that I would go to for 3 years, three a year for 3 years, so 9. I learned a total of 14 different modalities. But more important is through learning through the other people that I was in school with, that I was developing relationships with. I'm a big questioner. I'm a big person who's constantly going, why, like a parrot, wanting to, because I want to understand. I want to like take everything in. And finally, a friend of mine said, Marla, stop asking why and just accept what it is, where it is at the moment, and stop trying to figure it out and allow things to just unfold.
Mm.
And that was it doesn't sound like a big thing, but for me, it was a big thing because I had to learn to let go. It was a part of my need to control and to understand so I could maneuver. And it was sort of like letting a feather go in the wind or a balloon go in the wind, and it just floated away. It was like, wow, that was very freeing. It was very liberating for me.
Yeah, to just let go of the need to question and to be able to, because so much I think of our connection with the spirit world or different things we do metaphysically it's hard to wrap our head around. And trying so hard to wrap your head around it, well, I think could be possible, it also takes you out of that faith, right? It takes you out of
Right.
that kind of belief, and it takes you away from your intuition, right? Because it's kind of like, can you just gauge like, oh, does this feel right? Right? And it could
Right.
that be enough, right?
And you can't do it if you're trying to control the situation. And that's the big thing, is you can't allow spirit to talk through you or have you feel what's going on if you're not open to it. And if your mind is thinking about, how do I do this? How do I maneuver this? Well, then you can't be open, because your wheels are just constantly turning. And that's where meditation comes in. And that's how meditation becomes such a helpful tool to open yourself up to hearing or receiving spirit, grounding yourself, helping yourself if you're going through anxiety or depression, helping yourself through those issues. You don't have to suffer with those issues. You can breathe slowly. You can close your eyes, put both feet on the floor, and just slowly breathe in and slowly breathe out, and just count, and have something rhythmic happening. So you can count in for 6, hold for 4, release for 8, and just keep counting that. And it will just help you in so many areas. If you're in pain, it can help with pain alleviation. So I'm a huge advocate for meditation and for breathing exercises.
Yes, yes, as am I. My listeners know I'm always saying everyone tries to skip the meditation part of it. But I'm like, the meditation is where so much of the magic and so much of the power is. You can't skip it. It's really so vital to having these connections, and like you said, to receiving those messages and to getting yourself beyond yourself in a way, right?
Right.
So
It's so true.
with the control aspect, because I feel like this is something that's so insidious in just like our culture these days, is this like desire to control outcomes, to control how we show up for, to control our success, to control how our relationships go, to control our body, right? What are the things that you would tell someone that was, let's say, I'm trying to think of a more specific example to give you something to work with. Let's say someone is trying to control the trajectory of their career and like hyper in their head and like hyper planning about it and all of that. What kind of techniques or advice would you give them to be able to fully like step back, let go, and take their hands off the wheel a little bit in that area?
Well, I would tell them to step back and let go. And the reason I want to address something, because I really fully feel that the reason there's so many people needing to control everything is based on the wounds that they carry. And so how do you assure yourself that you're not going to get hurt again, which isn't the case really, it's just a fallacy, but by trying to grab control and control the, like you said, the trajectory of a job or a relationship or the way your body is, and instead of allowing things to go because it's the natural flow of it. But going back to the career path, um, I think you need to sometimes just, like you said, sit back and observe what's going on and allow yourself to figure out this. You need the space to be able to figure out what's going on and how to maneuver things. If you're having conflicts, if you don't know conflict resolution, then talk to somebody. I would go and invest in yourself and talk to somebody who's very strong in their ability to help guide somebody on conflict resolution, so they learn how to talk to their supervisor, manager, boss, whatever you want to call them, in a way that you're going to be able to get through and be heard. But you also need to be receptive to what they're going to say, because they might need to give you some constructive criticism, because you might think you're doing everything right, but they might not be agreeing with you. And in your need to try to maneuver, and that even goes for the competition, trying to step on someone to get where you're going. Well, I don't believe in doing that, because I believe that there's a karmic return in that. If you're going to step on someone and do something to somebody, well, you pay the price at some point, whether it's in this body, on the other side, or you get into a situation in a reincarnated life in the future where now you're the person being stepped on and you don't know why, and you don't know why the relationship is so bad. So my feeling is don't look at everything as competition. Let's look at it as collaboration. And it takes the pressure off of, needing to step on people to get where you want to go.
Yeah. And I think also with the letting go comes that ability to tap into your own guidance. And I think when we're all tapping into our own guidance, there really isn't any competition because we're not all directed to do the same things or in the same ways. And so it can become really apparent what's right for you when you let go of kind of like the structure of what you think you need to do, right? Or what we think the world needs us to do, right? In that
Yes.
moment. Um, and so what are some of the other, on your journey to loving yourself? Because I feel like it's so funny. I work with a lot of one-on-one clients for spiritual mentorship as well. And I feel like I always get the question like, gosh, is this journey ever over? And I laugh
No.
and I'm like, no, no, no. But there are, like you were mentioning with the meditation, and one of the things that I really love and I advocate for is that we build up a toolbox, right? We build up a toolbox, and then when things come up, we can like open up that toolbox and say, okay, what do I need today? Is it a meditation today? Great. Is it this energy healing technique? Great. And that's kind of like a day by day self-love journey. So what are your like favorite tools or most transformational tools in that toolbox that you really felt, either made a shift like while you were going through your journey, or something that you find yourself continually coming back to as like, a good one?
First of all, I want to go back to what you were saying because I just read something, I think it was yesterday or today, about each lifetime and how we come back and we have the similar lifetimes that we did before over and over and over again. But hopefully, if we're aware and we put in the effort, we start working through our stuff so that each time we get it faster and faster and faster. And pretty soon, all those lessons that you needed to work through, all those wounds, the healing you needed to get, you get, and then you move to another lifetime. So a series of lifetimes where you, and I'm paraphrasing this whole thing. And so know that this is a journey. The journey has no end point. Even when your body, you die and you're or transition and you lose this shell of a body, your spirit stays and it goes on. And this is just a pit stop, where you're experiencing all these, as they call it, earth school, these physical changes, and they say growing old isn't for the weak. It's a big change. It's different. And I laugh about it all the time because obviously our age difference is, when I remember when I was your age and how idealistic and everything I was and where I am today. But the reality of it is it'll continue the next life I have. So I did want to address that because I thought that was really important. And
and
then,
and just
okay,
I think that is really important, and I think that's also why, at least in my theory on that, and feel free to push back, I'm open, is that that's why some of these patternings feel so familiar to us and feel so comfortable to us. And just because they feel familiar and comfortable doesn't mean that they're good for us, right?
right.
It's because we've already just had a lot of experience in that. And I love astrology. I don't know if you do, but I always like
Yes.
looking at someone's south node, to be able to see like what's kind of the, I have like Libra in my south node. So I've always like had, been good at relationships, been like a peacemaker. I have like a lot of experience in that. But then you can also look at that and say, okay, well, had a lot of past lives where maybe that being in that area like has not been beneficial, right?
Right.
um
Yes.
so what kind of past life work do you advise people to do? And my question with this is actually because I've had personally one of the first things during my spiritual awakening, it reminded me kind of like you said, you had your like psychic moment. It was kind of like you're like,
Right.
whoa. Mine was like a past life flashback moment when I had my spiritual awakening, and I started having these, just past life flashbacks. And I've always been curious, how beneficial do you feel going back to past lives or doing work with past lives is versus how often versus how much do we just like should be here and now and focused on this life?
So one of my new tools is past life regression. And so this is what I've learned. And I think when you want to go into the past life, if it's just for a curiosity, like parlor game kind of thing, no, absolutely not. That is not beneficial whatsoever. Oh, so I was Joan of Arc in a past life, but that doesn't help you to heal, to move on. And this is a technique to help you to look back at what went on in your life so that you could see the parallels between that life and what you may be going through in this current life and how you might be able to heal the wound so this gets settled and this life you don't have to do it again moving forward. So past life regression, I think, is powerful if it's done right for the right reasons. Again, if you it like we go to a psychic fair and you were talking, and this came to mind, this analogy where you go to like 5 different psychics in one day, right? And they might be the best psychics in the world, but they're each going to tell you something different because they're coming at it from a different angle. And past life regression is the same way. But what comes out is what needs to come out. So if I did a past life regression on you, the past life that you got, whether you liked it or not, is not it's not like, well, I didn't like that one, or I didn't. No, it's for you to see and learn so you could take it moving into your life today, and how you may let's say you had a lot of conflict in a past life. Well, in this life you could see what happened by dealing with your past life, your conflict, in one way. But now in this life you could say, oh, I dealt with it this way, it didn't work, let's try and change things up. Because in AA they have that saying, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, but the results are the same. Well, it's the same thing if you're going into a past life regression and seeing something, but then you see yourself doing it in this lifetime and you don't do anything to change it, heal it, move it on.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think some of the most helpful things for me with past lives, and I love that you said that because that's what I I've always been like a real stickler about that, because once like my friends found out that I can go into the Akashic records and kind of, everyone's like, oh, I want to check it out.
Right.
It's like,
Exactly.
no, no. Um, but the times that I have had those experiences, whether they just like, sometimes they just come on during meditation or at different times in the bath, or, it's always like somewhat inconvenient, but,
Of course
or
it is.
and I'm like, oh God, that was so dramatic. Now I like wake up like in the bath. And my fiance is like, are you okay? What's going on? Um, but it's been really helpful. I recently had I'm getting married, and I was having all of these like fears around getting married and like this, commitment kind of stuff, which I was like, this doesn't feel like me. Like, I don't like, we have a great relationship. Everything's great. Why am I so scared? Like, it felt like my life was going to end by getting married.
Right.
Right. And so of course I wasn't even like thinking like going back to past lives about it. I was trying to psychoanalyze myself in this life. And then of
Right.
course a past life just kind of comes up for me. And I see so clearly how I've had multiple past lives where, my like being married and having a kid was kind of the end of my life, and I was muzzled and I was prevented from like doing my work in the world and all of that. And just even seeing it, like you were mentioned, just being able to see that, it was like the spell of the current life was lifted, because it made so much sense to be like, oh, okay, that was then, this is now. Like, I'm not living in that time, right? That's not
Right.
what's going on now. And so much of that is, I think us being able to go back to those past lives, especially for those things when we feel like there's something coming up in our lives that we can't like figure out or we can't explain. And that, I think that's when past lives can be really, really helpful.
It's true. And for you, I also feel that in some of those past lives, you were a man who was the person who was shutting the woman down, treating the woman like a maid or a slave or, baby maker, whatever you want to call it. So because we're not always, just because we're one sex in one life doesn't mean we're this sex in all our lives.
Mm.
And we're always, in past lives, we've always been the victims. We've also been the perpetrators of whatever's going on. So it's never just, clear, like I'm a woman and this has happened to me, and it's happened to me a number of times. It just so happens the lifetimes that showed to you were those that you were a female being, you know, sold, squashed, whatever you want to call it. But my
Yeah.
feeling is you were also a male doing that to women, and that is a really huge trigger for you as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. It's so fun. And I think
Yeah.
there's a level of healing you can get from that you just can't get if you're only working on the surface of this current lifetime.
It's so true. I just started using a phrase saying, healing comes from within. You break a bone, and it breaks through your skin. Just because your skin heals, the bone isn't necessarily healed. You have to wait till the bone heals before you could start walking or running on it, whatever it might be, or
Mm.
using it in its capacity. And it's the same thing with the wounds that we receive, whether from a past life we bring forward or from this current life and what we've had, we've brought to ourselves because we choose it, right? In our pre-birth plan, we choose all our stuff. And so it's just how we work, but healing these wounds within first and knowing that you have to do it from within. Just saying, I'm going to be happy, well, that's great. You might get a glimpse of happiness, but by receiving true happiness is when you start healing. You start healing your wounds, you start healing your heart, and the things that really cause blocks for you and issues for you.
Ooh, okay. So you just hit something that made me like, ooh, I want to get her opinion on this, and feel free to just be fully honest. But with what you just said, I'm really curious. Yeah, especially, you just got this, it became a master metaphysician. Um, how do you feel about, let's say, more of like the Abraham Hicks school of thought? That's more like keep your vibe high, keep, if a subject is, kind of putting you in a funky place, switch the subject to a subject that you can be on the more high flying vibe, and that kind of school of thought that says the most magnetic thing we can do is be in joy and focus on that. What's your take on all of that as it pertains
I
to like manifesting and high vibration, all that stuff?
I agree with it. You can't manifest. Everything meets you where you are. All right. So if you're vibrating way down here and you want something up here, it's not going to happen. So either you need to bring yourself up because it's not necessarily going to come down to your level. And let's say maybe that's the job. Maybe you have to be here to get this job, and maybe you can raise yourself a little bit higher and the vibration come and you'll find yourself matched. So I believe in that. But realistically, we're human beings. Things happen, they affect us. We get sad, we get hurt. People hurt our feelings, and that phrase about not allowing. Well, sometimes because the wound is still the wound, it's like either pulling off the scab or pressing the bruise. So it hurts. And I think sometimes, yes, putting on lively music will make you feel better. It doesn't fix the issue though. And so, yes, you can raise it, but you also need to understand that brushing things under the rug, what happens is you end up with lumps under the rug. So it makes that pretty uncomfortable too. So the real focus is when you start working on healing yourself, um, you will find everything starts shifting for you. And the shifts may be small and subtle at first, but all of a sudden you'll go into going, wow, I'm singing every morning. I just realized every morning I wake up singing. And that's because of how great you're feeling inside. Because again, things are when the wounds heal, they go away, or a
Mm.
layer of them goes away. It's not as deep. It's not as effective. It doesn't hurt as deep down inside. And so that's how it works. But I believe, look, I love Bashar. I don't know if you know Bashar.
No, tell us.
Entity very much like Abraham, and has got amazing pearls of wisdom on how to live life. So, for example, um, relationships. People are so afraid to let go of relationships that don't serve them. And Bashar says a relationship is a relationship till it's not a relationship anymore. And I used to take everything so personally, and I would be like, oh, my heart, oh, I'm so broken. It just hurts so bad. But all of a sudden, that saying for me was like this huge epiphany. And I just came to say, you know what? Yeah, people come into our life for a reason, season, or a lifetime. And sometimes, you come to the end of the road of the relationship you have. And if you let go in love and let go, not wishing anybody ill, as a friend of mine says, and I really like it, the worst thing I'll say to anybody is, I wish you an interesting life. And they can make it whatever they want.
I love that.
And so I do too, and I've adopted it. And it's like, that's what I think. I never wish anybody ill because I don't want that coming back to me. I just wish you an interesting life, and I move on, because not everybody is meant to be in our life forever.
Mm. And
And
you could take that and expand it to almost everything in your life, right?
absolutely.
Like, what if we just accepted that the things that are in our life right now, whether it is whatever it is, like the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever circumstances, whatever is there, it's going to be here until it's not here.
Right. That's it. You're where you are for a reason. And I look at it as, and somebody told this to me years ago when I was in my 20s, that you are where you are because of what you need to learn from where you're at.
Mm.
I know that sounds sort of confusing, and I had to really pull back and say, you're right. And now I look at everything, whether it's positive or I call it perceived negative. What I perceive negative for me, you might say that's not so bad, but somebody else might think of it as a death sentence. That's why it's all perception. But so my perception is that, the negative, perceived negative, that everything is an opportunity, a gift, or a lesson, or a combination. So it's never a straight, oh, this is the end of my world. No, 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 not at all. It is just where you are in the moment. Find out what's in it for you. Do you have something to learn from this situation? Is there an opportunity for you to move into something else because of the situation? Or are you finding a really amazing gift because of it? Maybe it's an epiphany or whatever it might be. And it just makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I love that. And for someone that's listening and is thinking like, where do I begin on this journey? Like, I know that probably the way I'm feeling right now, or the fears I have, or the blocks I have, or the things that aren't working in my life are probably because of some of these wounds that you talked about.
Yes.
How do you discern where to start for the person listening?
Well, I always say start where you are. So let's say you're going through anxiety. Um, well, what could the anxiety be from? First of all, you also have to rule out if it's actually, an actual physical mm, short that's going on in your body or your mind. Because anxiety could be you're running through something like having a challenge like bipolar or
Mm.
schizophrenia or something like that. So you want to rule that out. But if you ruled it out and it's just anxiety, then you have to say, okay, what are you afraid of moving forward? Because anxiety is being too worried about what's in front of you and not knowing. It's fear, and fear is being concerned about something that hasn't even happened yet.
Which I'm
Where
sure we probably are at an all-time high right now, after the pandemic and with everything kind of going back and forth, and it feels like things change on a day-to-day basis. I feel like we probably have an epidemic of anxiety across the world.
I think we do too. And so here's an example, a true example. This morning, I just came back from Tampa last night to see my brother, and I haven't seen him in years. And I've been home not even 24 hours, and a friend calls me, and she's like a sister to me. But almost immediately, the question is, are you going to go get a test for COVID? And I'm like, wait a minute. I haven't even gotten through my first day back yet. I'm not running for a test. And I also don't live in fear of COVID. I mean, I know some people do, and they worry constantly of it. And I bet you they're the ones who will allow themselves to be more susceptible to getting it, because I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about getting it.
Yeah,
Um, if it happens, I'll deal with it.
exactly. Yes.
Excuse me. And I'm of one of these beliefs where don't worry about anything that hasn't happened. You worry about it when it comes, you deal with it when it happens. But if you worry about it before, first of all, you spend so much energy just spinning and spinning and spinning. It's like mental masturbation.
Yes. Yes.
And let it go. Why worry about something that hasn't happened? And if you think you've been exposed, take the action steps. But I mean, I'm again not even home 24 hours. I'm not running out to get a COVID test. I'm backlogged. I'm going
Yeah.
to get through what I need to get through, and then if I feel I need to do that, then fine. But if nobody around me has gotten sick, there's no need to get a test.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you were saying, because you can apply that whether it's for like COVID or for literally anything in your life,
Yes,
right? Where it's like
yes,
the friend asking about the COVID test could be your, a friend asking about like, I don't know, did you, just because I was been planning my wedding this year. So I've had friends asking like constantly, we postponed it once. So
yep.
they're like, oh, are you going to postpone it? Oh, is it still happening? And I'm like, I don't want it. Nobody talk to me about it. you know, it's like not allowing like other people's fears or other people's stories, whatever's going on in them, to kind of shift your intuition, right? It's like, obviously, if you had got the intuitive hit, you know what, I should get a test because whatever, right? You get the hit, then you do it
Right.
and you'd fit it into your day. But I love what you said, because that's something where it's like we worry about it double. Anxiety is like being in the suffering of it happening when it hasn't happened. And then
Right.
if it did happen, if it does happen, then it has to happen again. Now, do you believe that by that worrying or by that fear that we can call things into our lives?
It's called self-fulfilled prophecy. Yes, absolutely. Because what you put out comes back like a boomerang. And so I call it the boomerang effect because I always have a saying for something. And so, but what you put out is going to come back at you tenfold. So why take that energy and put it out there thinking something negative is going to happen? And then when it happens, and I'll give you an example of that, then you're like, oh my God, it happened. So my story is, this is 2009. I was living in Memphis. I'm driving to Chicago to see my son, and it's a beautiful day. And I'm on the phone with my roommate and hands free. I'm always hands free. I'm always safe about it. And all of a sudden I look up and there's a car bearing down on me with no head above the steering wheel. And I'm going 73 miles an hour in a 55. So I'm already speeding. Here's this car bearing down on me. And I keep saying to my roommate, I'm going to get hit. I'm going to get hit. I'm going to get hit. Well, of course, I got hit because there was nowhere to move. It was, 2-lane highway. Well, it was a 4-lane highway, two in each direction. I'm in the fast lane. I couldn't get over because there was too much traffic. If I went to the left, the shoulder was so narrow, I would have gone into a ditch. And that's an example of a self-fulfilled prophecy, even though I couldn't get out of my own way for it. But all of a sudden it stopped and I said, damn it, I've been hit. Like, oh, it's a
Yeah.
big surprise, right? I mean, I saw it happening and freaking out about it. But that's how self-fulfilled prophecies work in the way of energy. You go, oh my God, COVID. I'm using COVID because that seems to be like the big thing today. And it's not that I'm afraid of it and I don't want to, diminish anybody's feelings because they're their feelings. But when you spend so much time and energy focused on it, then when it comes back and you end up with it, you act like, oh my God, how did I get this? Well, you've been talking about it. You've been putting it out there. So it's going to come back to you. And that's the law of attraction,
Yeah.
a part of the law of attraction, I should say.
Yeah, part of that. And I think that also what you said, I'm a big believer. I talk a lot about practical magic, and I feel like that's exactly what when you were saying, like, you do the logical action steps, and like you wash your hands, or you abide by, you keep yourself clean, you don't share drinks with people that you don't know, or anything like that, right? So you do the logical earthly stuff, right?
Right.
But then you also don't live in fear, right? So it's like the same thing. If you want to I don't know, if you're trying to work out, let's say, right? Or you're trying to like, upgrade your body or something in that way, right? So you
Hmm.
going to the gym, you're eating healthy, but then you can't walk around being like, oh, I'm so scared that like my body's never going to be fit or whatever. I
Right.
don't know, silly example,
I can't
but
drop the weight. I can't drop the
yeah.
weight. The weight's not coming off. Well, then something's going on. So again, that's when you check your hormones, you check your thyroid, make sure it's not an actual physical something that's keeping you from doing that. And if it isn't, then you need to look at, okay, where are your thoughts? Where are your actions? Where are you focusing your attention? It makes a difference.
So how do you help? I know you're an intuitive life coach to your clients. How do you
Yes.
help them when they get stuck in one of those fear-based rackets around something? What's your kind of like go-to to be like, Sally comes to you and she's totally, you can see that she's like creating her own self-fulfilling prophecy, and things are not going well, and she's doing all of the logical earthly stuff, but it's still not going well. What's your plan of attack for her?
I think depending upon what's really going on, because everything is so personalized. And I know you're using this as an example, but I want to just be really clear that it can't be clear cut, because I need to be able to get into the energy and see what's going on. And then I could talk about what I'm receiving. And is that what's going on with you? I need to, people look at healers like, okay, fix me. No, no, no. It doesn't work that way. We're partners. I have the tools, but you have to do your homework too. You have to do your piece of it, and not just expect that somebody else is going to just snap their fingers like Bewitched, which is no time show, and boom, the practical magic happens, boom, they're fixed. No, you're not going to learn if you don't do your work. So, in the case that you just mentioned, I might, depending on what I'm feeling, what I'm getting, I would talk to her about it. And then, there might be journaling involved. Sometimes journaling and getting your emotions out of your body onto a paper is really cathartic. Whether you read it afterwards, you just burn it. It's very cathartic depending upon what's going on. Um, or maybe they make their list. I call it the yin and yang list. Make the list of positive, make the list of negatives, and let's say do the negative first and then put the positive behind it. And that's the way I would do that. And know that there's a positive to what's going on to your negative, and you can shift your focus to the positive. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't need to be painful or difficult, but you also need to do the work and pay attention to see where your life shifts are.
Yeah.
I took this class about the male and female dynamic, which talks about the male and female balance within each and every one of us. And there was an exercise about big things that happen. You write how old you were, and I saw how my masculine led my life until I stepped down this path. And then I saw where the feminine and the balance came in, where I stopped having the need to control, achieve, conquer, you know, push forward to get this level of success, and move and move and move. And all of a sudden I'm balanced. It's like, this feels pretty darn good. And I saw when it happened, and I said, that's exactly when it happened. But when I was going through the steps, you couldn't see the epiphany. But then when you were done with the whole exercise, you pulled back, it was like, whoa, this is amazing. And so this is what I'm talking about with, you know, having to pull back and really look in a detached way. And the other thing I'm going to say is, if you look at your situations in a more detached way, in a more neutral way, which sometimes it's very hard when you're emotionally involved, and I know that personally, but it's an exercise in trying to pull away and looking like you're watching a movie that you've seen over and over again, and you see different nuances. Well, this also happens when you look at your life and you
Mm.
look at what's going on through some of these exercises.
Yeah, it's giving you that like kind of mountaintop perspective on it.
Exactly.
Or for us, after, and I always say, I look at it like I'm the client. Like, how would I look at it if I was the client, and then it just gives you that same perspective where it's like an unattached but a loving, guiding perspective. um that's yeah, there's so much in there, and I totally agree with you. It's such an individualized path, and that's why sometimes it's hard. I try my best, on the podcast to just kind of give people, the way I think about this is that the people that are listening right now, that there's something that we said here that hopefully was like a click for them, was something like, oh, I'm going to grab that and run with that. Even if it was just one quote or one little thing you mentioned of being like, oh, actually, I want to learn more about that, or I want to go down that pathway. Can you tell us a little bit more about what people can expect in your book, and who the book is for?
The book is for everyone. It truly is. Because my story is mine, but my story isn't unusual to other people. And I'm talking about in parallels. So you may not walk in my shoes, but look, I grew up in a dysfunctional home with a lot of abandonment and neglect, because my parents were so worried about what was going on with them that they forgot to worry about their children and care about doing things with and for them. Um, and so it talks about my journey, but I also, in the back of the book, I'm going to hold it up. I've got all these little tags on it. I don't think you can see it with the
You
background.
gotta
I'm
put it in front
sorry.
of your face to see it with the background.
There
There
we
we
go.
go.
Sorry about that. Oh, it's
That's like
moving. Come on,
it's like
where are
Harry
you?
Potter. It's like
It's
you put
there
the
right
cloak
now.
of invisibility on you.
It's true. I'm trying to get the hey, wait. I'm almost there. Well,
Is it-
anyway, I've got like 14 or 15 techniques in here that I used to help me release repressed anger. I was a queen repressor. I repressed everything. I saw Gone with the Wind when I was very young. And I thought what Scarlett O'Hara did was absolutely brilliant. I'll fiddly dee, I'll worry about it tomorrow. Push down, push down, push down. Well, at some point, if you think of it as a soda bottle with a lot of carbonation, at some point that top is going to pop right off, and it's going to regurgitate all over your life, which happened to me. And but we need to learn to release these emotions because they're really toxic. They hurt us. They hurt our physical ability, physical health, mental, emotional, spiritual. And so there are techniques to getting that out. There's techniques on forgiveness, because truly, until you learn how to forgive others, and even more importantly, forgive yourself, um, we are so hard on ourselves. We're truly, truly brutal as humans. We wouldn't talk to anybody the way we talk to ourselves. That self-talk that just. So there are techniques on how to release that and how to do forgive somebody else, forgive yourself. Because once you can do that and let it go, you're just in. It's so cathartic. Then it's learning how to accept yourself, as I like to say, warts, wrinkles, and all. Because when we look in the mirror, where do we go? Right straight to the area of our body or face that we don't like the most, and then we sort of just get hyper focused on it. Well, let's learn to accept it because it's a part of us, and there's duality for a reason. And then ultimately walking into self-love. And it's a process, and it's a continuous process, because just because you hit self-love once, you need to work to stay there. You need to still keep doing all the exercises, because just like somebody who's fit and trim and sculpted, if they stop working out and they start eating lots of simple simple carbs and sugar and drinking whatever, guess what? That sculpting is going to go away. So you need to really keep it up to stay in that place. But when you're there, you feel so amazing and so happy and joyful. And things that might have set you off a long time ago when you were wounded, like more fully wounded, will not bother you, and you'll be able to pull yourself back and look at things with more neutrality.
Yes, I love
So
that. I feel like that's one of the big markers of progress, right? Is when a
yes,
situation that a couple years ago would have just sent you off the rails or sent you into, some sort of emotional reaction, you can just kind of, "Meh, okay." and like just kind of be
Yes.
neutral amidst it. And I love your analogy about the working out. I think that's so important. I think so often people come to the spiritual journey or the self-love journey and they want it to be this thing that they can, like 30 days of this and I'm going to love myself,
Right.
And I remember that was my first meditation I ever did was like a 40-day self-love Kundalini thing or whatever. And I remember going to my teacher after the 40 days and being like, I don't think it worked. And just being so naive, to the fact that it's true. It's a muscle that we constantly work out. And just like if we don't work out our physical body, if you don't use it, you lose it, or whatever that little catchphrase
Right.
is, you say it. It's the same thing with our spiritual, because we have so much the forces of the world, the forces of maybe our past lives or our wounding or whatever. There's so much that's kind of like pulling us right in the other direction that we do need to keep our muscles strong to stay connected and to be in that space of self-love.
True. And let's look at it this way. For people who are on the spiritual path, they're not new souls. They've been around a time or two. So in the many reincarnations you have, you collect the wounds. I mean, the same again, as I mentioned earlier in the show, your life will be similar until you get it. And once you start getting it, you get it faster each lifetime until those issues are done and you go to another lifetime where there are different issues you need to work through. And then, you work through it faster and faster and faster. And that's when you really get the golden ticket of life, spiritually and physically. When you can know that you're working on a lot of things and be gentle on yourself, be kind to yourself, because you have lived a lot of lifetimes. And until we learn our lessons, we keep having to relive them. And that's why we do it. So an alcoholic who's still an alcoholic in this lifetime most likely had many lifetimes of being an alcoholic. And they now, when they go to AA and they get sober, well, guess what? Check. It's off the list. Now, my next lifetime, that's going to be off the list. I might have another challenge or wound to deal with, but that one's gone. And that's a really easy analogy to share.
Yeah, and that is huge, right? And that's progress, and that I think we come with like a buffet of maybe wounds and challenges and stuff, right? And I think it's really important, especially when you're doing this work, to acknowledge that, right? To be like, if you like with the alcoholic, right? That's just
Yes.
you can be in the celebration of your sobriety, right, as much as
Right.
you're then thinking about like your mother wound or thinking about whatever whatever else is going. It's like sometimes we, I think, can skip right past that, right, because we can just be like, okay, well, that's done, okay, what's the next, I have this to do, right? And it's like we also need to acknowledge that we are doing, if you're on this journey and you're doing the work and you're taking it step by step, every victory is a victory, right? And by honoring those victories, it gives us more momentum, right? I think people sober alcoholics, I know a lot of sober alcoholics that are so inspiring because
Mm-hmm.
when they were able to conquer that pattern in their life, they realized just how much else they could conquer, right? That's like with anything. When you
Right.
heal like some sort of wound or some sort of challenge and you actually acknowledge that, and I love you saying it in that way of being like, you're not going to have it in the next life now. So you actually are
Right.
clearing it, even if there are 5 other things, like you cleared a big one,
Going
and that's
on.
good too.
Huge. And I want to bring up, because Spirit keeps is pushing me to talk
No.
about suicide.
Okay.
And the same thing happens. So if at the point of taking your life, um, here's the thing, that's a free will act. And if you choose to try to shortcut your way out by taking your life so you don't have to deal with what's in front of you, you will come back in a future life having to deal with issues that will make you want to take your life. Here's the thing, when you are at that place and you make a conscious choice that, you know what, as depressed as I am, I'm not taking my life. I know that I can get to a better place, and you work for it, or you trust, I have faith that you're going to get to a better place, and you don't take your life. You've just cleaned that cycle of
Mm,
suicide in this lifetime. And so moving forward, that's one issue you're not going to have to be faced with again.
wow. Yeah, that's powerful.
Yeah. So there's spirit was like tapping me, going, "You need to talk about it."
Good. Well, I hope someone needed to hear that, because I'm sure someone did, because that is so important to know what, with, and whether you're at the point of suicide or you're just in a really dark place. Um, I think it is that knowing that, like, okay, if I can traverse the darkness and make it out to the other side here and do whatever I need to do to keep afloat and move through it and get there, um that you will get through it. If that's your commitment, you will get through it. And then also, you get to live your next incarnation and probably the rest of this life, right, having overcome that challenge, which is just the greatest gift, right?
Absolutely. And you also know that you have a choice on how you can move forward in the life. I like to say, wake up each day like you're an artist with a blank canvas. You have the ability to make the day as beautiful as you want it to be, as beautiful
Mm.
as you want that painting to be. Nobody else can take that away from you. You can allow them to project, their projections to affect you, but you've allowed them to affect you. And I know it sounds easier said than done, but everything I'm talking about, I've lived through, I've done. Well, I haven't committed suicide and I haven't been an alcoholic, but I'm talking about the dark moments where you think about it. I've thought about it. I thought about, well, maybe I'm better off not being here, but I stuck it through it. And, you know, many, many, many years later, I'm living my best life, and I'm so grateful to be able to share that with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. I think that's such a beautiful thing. We can end on that note of really just, I love that. Waking up to every day and realizing, I have my main program that I teach is called Divinely Design Your Life, which is kind of a similar, I feel like, energy to that. But I think it's so important to think about. Oftentimes we think about divinely designing our life or being the artist in a big way, right, and like
Right.
the overall picture. But actually, and then we forget about the day to day and we just like get through the day to day, and it's like, no,
Yeah.
like today is a choice, and you get to decide how you're going to experience everything today, and you get to decide, how you're going to, you know we have so much power of the energy that we bring to everything in our day. I love that.
And remember, choices have power. And as adults, we make over 33,000 choices consciously and unconsciously a day. So those are a lot of choices. Whether to get up on the right side of the bed or the wrong side of the bed, whether to floss our teeth or just brush them, or water pick them, whatever it might be. Those are all choices. And those are just tiny little things. What you're going to eat. Do you have coffee? Do you have tea? Do you don't have either? I mean, those are all choices. And when you think about them adding up to it, it goes into what you're saying. We have a choice on how we want our life, our day, our hour to be.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you
So
so much for being
thanks,
with
Cassandra.
us, Marla. Is there
I'm
any
so
final parting words you want to say that's coming through before?
Well, if anybody wants to find me, I'm at Marla Goldberg, and Goldberg has 2Rs.com. You can see what I do, how I work with my clients, learn about my writing, and let's see if we can work together and I can help you as well.
Absolutely. And I will put all those links below so you can check out all of Marla's social
Thank
media, her website. You can book a session with her. You can grab her book if you're curious about that. And that'll all be just, if you click the notes section below this podcast, it'll all be right there. So thank you so much,
you.
Marla. It was a pleasure chatting with
Thank you,
you.
Cassandra. Appreciate it.